Welcome back to Team Out of the Tank. This is Doug here, and today we got two new members for the Team Out of the Tank. They are the founding creators, and one of them is Omega
What's up,
Eden.
boys? Yeah, we're doing the thing.
Today's video is more of a podcast. We don't have a podcast to put it on, so it's going to be here on YouTube. But we're just going to be talking about the meta and everything about it. Another one of our team members is Dirty D Nasty.
What's up, y'all? It's your boy, Dirty D Nasty.
So,
Yeah,
alright,
boy.
meta has been in this perpetual state of one deck beats the other, but it's usually I feel like it's three decks just contending for the number one spot. A Bosch, like mono red. I don't see mono black topping, but mono red topping for with a Bosch, the Piercer. You got Bant Urion and Jessica Urion decks. That, to me, in my opinion, is a trifecta of the meta right now, with most of it always like being Urion that's on top.
Sounds pretty accurate. A lot of board wipes, easy way to get around the mono red matchup, and then just the gas to go farther on any other matchup that you're going to deal with.
And that's the thing. Yorion, like when Yorion was first revealed, they're like 80 card decks. Well, that's stupid. But it actually let the decks play a lot more resourceful cards that people anticipated, like the enchantment, Omen of the Sea, Omen of the Sun. And Omen of the Sun is really useful because against your Bosch decks, it gives you blockers. Even if they like just chump blockers, it also gives you life, which once again against an aggro deck, the life you gain and the blockers you get puts them behind. Um, you also get other, like Teferis, Narsets, so you can control the pace of the game. And especially one of my like cards I don't like, but I think is really useful, Elspeth Conquers Death.
Disgusting ways to bounce enchantments with Yorin, and then on top of that, just play my Teferi, bounce back to Elspeth, play it again. Infinite combos, pretty much. And Teferi even bounces back Yorin, which I've seen a ton. So you play the Yorin, you exile the Teferi comes back in. Next turn, you bounce the Yorin, do it again, rinse and repeat. Get draw, get dudes. It's disgusting.
It really is. It really is. Um, and obviously, it's not like just one card was introduced that put us here. I feel like it started with Mono Red, which then included Teferi, because the game was so fast paced that Teferi was introduced to slow it down. And because Teferi was introduced to slow it down, it just started like a whole wave point to where everything kind of had to be OP. Because what was it? After World of Spark, we got M20, right? Which is the Elementals? Or was it
That's
the other
right.
way? Yeah, and that's where Agent came in, where, hey, you have a Teferi, I can take it. Which Agent is, on the other hand, one of the cards that I feel like should be banned for the fact that, unlike Agent of Detention, I think that's his name, Agent of Detention, when Agent takes a creature, let's just say I have four creatures, right? Agent takes it, I get rid of Agent, I get my creatures back. Yes, they don't have haste, so I have to wait the next turn to attack. But unlike Agent of Treachery, you can take lands, and since he's not attached to any of it, I can literally sack it myself, bring it back, and take another creature or land, which is stupidly broken.
Yeah, it's extremely good. And Deputy Detention, just FY, the three
Deputy
drop
Detention, yeah,
exile.
yeah.
Yep. But yeah, as far as problem cards for this format, realistically, the introduction to Teferi changed how we play Magic currently because we don't play Control anymore, which makes problematic situations. If I can't play Control, Fires runs rampant because nobody's playing counter spells, and then you turn around and have Mono Red on the other end of that with Obosh currently. Luris has seen some play with some red black, mono black, that sort of thing, black white. But ultimately, I think it boils down to those two cards being problematic here, just letting people run rampant with. I mean, you look at some of them, you're in five colors, whatever you want to splash in there. And then you got Fate of Wishes to go into the sideboard, just grab stuff, play it for free, not have to worry about a thing. But yeah, Teferi hit the scene, completely changed the way the game played. It's been uncontested. If you're playing blue white, you're playing Teferi, even in ramp decks. It really is just that all around card that just gets too much value for what it does. And on top of that, it's not a so the three drop I +1. Oh, I get to play sorceries on my opponent's turn. It's the static. You can't play at instant speed. If that was a plus ability or a minus ability, very fair. But a static ability, I mean, control just stops. So, and again, once you stop control, now you've just got this plethora of decks that are just running out there with fires and all sorts of shenanigans inside of that to do things it wants to do. Yeah, I think that you said mono red is pretty much the only relevant deck against those decks, just because of what they can do right now with Obosh, with all the one drops, the banner that's being played. Trying to think of the name of it, but
Heraldic Banner.
Yeah, Heraldic Banner, making that deck even stronger because now not only do I tempo with damage, potentially Obosh on turn 4, on top of all that other damage, without a solid answer for that, the game is pretty much done. So even if you answer Obosh, it's still a lot of damage. 3 dudes, two power at least a piece, 6 damage on a turn. You answer Obosh, okay, you still get in 6, plus everything else that came in the precursing turns. So it's a really messed up format, in my opinion. But
Yeah,
It's
and
just it's just like stuff is on two different ends of the spectrum. So you're having like low curve, you're having like low curve decks like mono red and like Obosh and even some variants of like Luris decks. But then trying to set up a sideboard for all these different styles of deck, like two like drastically different styles of decks. You know, fires and mono red is basically two ends of the spectrum, and so there's really nothing in the mid range and really in the meta. You know, like you got like your standard like Sultai mid range, and there's like some like Abzan like controlish type of mid range, like rock style decks. But I mean, like there's really it's so difficult to have answers to both like comfortably, and you're pretty much forced to play companions now. You're pretty much at a disadvantage. You're almost at a -1 if you're not playing a companion in Magic right now. So it's almost like they didn't really force it on us, but just the power level of the cards are so high that you're literally not progressing, or you're not having that same advantage as someone else. So it's like they're starting out with eight cards. You're starting out with only 7. Not to mention if you have to mull or anything like that. Um,
yeah, and that is correct because the companions are in a weird spot themselves, kind of like adventure cards at first. When you cast it in adventure, it goes into its own exile, so you can still cast it. Companions don't have that spot; they have their own spot, so you can't hit it with like thought erasure, duress. It's there that isn't there, so they can cast it whenever they want. Yes, you can counter, but they're not gonna just like turn 3, I'm gonna cast my Luris. They're gonna wait till you like waste all your resources on their other threats and then bring it in as like a game ender. Which, once again, if it was in your hand, I would easily just take it out. But since it's not, it's stuck there like kind of like a threat saying, "Hey, it's gonna be here until you waste all your resources."
yeah, so it's like I feel like you said, like the only interaction with actual companions is, let's say you have like spot removal directly on the turn that someone plays Luris. But I mean, typically, like someone's already in a bad spot if they're forced to play Luris on 3. You know what I'm saying? Like they would have to, like typically they would want to play like Luris on 4, play their 1 drop, or Luris on 5, play their 2 drop from the graveyard, or like they're playing, if you're playing against Yorion, it's like they're wanting to set up their board state. If you can like answer the things that flicker, that they're trying to flicker at the end step before, like say they have like a guard mage on the board, like you're taking away like insane value. Um but this kind of brings up the Teferi problem. It's since you're having to deal with Yorion, Elspeth Conquers Death, Teferi, and their enchantments that they're playing all in the same deck, it's hard to have answers for everything outside of counter spells. But literally, Teferi's like, hey, that card just doesn't work, So it's like it's hard to like justify playing 3 mana counter spells when Teferi exists in the format, because if you're stuck on the draw against Teferi, that 3 mana counter spell is pretty much useless.
You better hope in your 80 card deck you happen to pull one of your copies of Mystical Dispute.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and that's my problem with Mystical Disputes. Like, it's a card that was created to counter blue, but it's still in the blue format, like in the blue colors. So like blue is abusing it, obviously. So if I wanted to play, let's just say, a creature that was split cost, you can literally cast your Mystical Dispute, which also goes with Teferi in your deck. So I can't, let's just say, play my Slitherwisp, which is a Demir flash deck, and that's my like why I hate Mystical Disputes. I feel like it should have been a different color with a touch of blue, but that's just me. But yeah, Mystical Disputes is really good for Teferi if you have it. If you don't, it's a dead card in your hand, especially in the later games.
Yeah, there was other ways of dealing with it. I think ultimately, Grasp of Darkness was kind of the idea, or not Myers Grasp, not Grasp of Dark. Well, no, not even Myers Grasp. Lord, I can't even.
Talking about Heartless Act.
No, the 2-drop that destroys white, or I think it's white, or can't even think of what it was now. I'll pull it up here and find it.
Are you talking about the green or white? The green or white, the instant speed you gain 1 life?
Yeah.
Yeah, Noxious Grasp.
So there was simple things like that, but the point is, with a card like Teferi, you give people these instant speed answers for something Teferi, and it's like, yeah, but I have to wait for it to hit the board. I have to give them their entire turn, and wait for it to come back around to me, play an instant speed at sorcery speed, and God forbid it's later in the game and they have a counterspell and I can't do anything about it. Which obviously at this point, not many people running counterspells, but at the time when Noxious Grasp was even seeing play, sometimes they did. So you run into that issue a lot, and there's really not much to contend with the fact that they've given these cards a lot of power to just do the things they do uncontested. That's really what it boils down to. And if
And
we really look at it, this is kind of an issue with this whole format, printing cards that are basically engines in and of themselves. I know Fires doesn't seem like an engine, but when you play a 4-drop spell that lets you cast all your spells for free twice per turn, and then you have cards like Shark Typhoon, which you can just cycle and make a dude on your opponent's turn. You have lands like Castle Vantress that can let you scry. It is an engine in and of itself. It's a 4-drop engine that lets you play 2 ridiculously good spells on your turn and then turn around and cycle and activate abilities on your opponent's turn.
And that's the thing. With Jeskai Yorion decks, you can abuse that to where you technically get 15 mana per turn. Where you can go, let's just say turn 5, you have Fires on the board, right? You can go
Yeah.
Luca, sack token, get Agent, go Yorion, bounce your Fires, your Luca, and your whatever else. So now you removed your Fires. You've played 2 5 mana cards, so that's 10 mana. And since you removed Fires, you can tap your mana to play another 5-drop spell. So you literally played 15 mana cards in the turn 5 without having to tap for like one of those cards except for the last one. So you can literally go Luca, Yorion, Elspeth Conquers Death, and that is a really big boss play for a deck that like I get it. The companions are split cost, so they make it a little bit easier to play. But Luca is 2 red, which is easily spammable. Fires is 1 red, so you can literally turn 1 go 1 mountain. I met the requirements for it. All my other lands don't matter. And then once they slam Fires, I don't even care about mana cost because I just pay whatever. I don't even have to pay whatever. I just play whatever as long as I meet the mana like numbers. And
Absolutely.
and that's my problem with Fires. Like I can literally go Fires and that's it. The whole deck is open. I can go Niv Mizzet, not even have any of those colors. Like just play nothing but like mana rocks that produce colorless, and I'll still be in a good position.
Yeah, and I'll take it back to just the fact that Teferi's in the format, because realistically, you wouldn't see that greedy of a deck in a format where control was a viable option. If we think about it, Agent of Treachery is 7 mana, Fires is 4. You're not going to get to those cards anytime soon. So ramp has to be careful how they play around control. Fires has to be careful how they play around control. But if I'm playing Jeskai and I'm running Teferi, now I don't have to consider it as even an issue. I just play Teferi on 3, play my Fires on 4. It's uncontested, and best case scenario, I play a Fires, drop another Fires right behind it, and I'm set. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, and you can only play 1 Elspeth on your turn, and that's the thing that's broken because let's just say I do go to fairy and you do answer, right? Well, you wasted your turn answering that one card. I can now go fires uncontested, go another fires. I'm set for the next turn, and I'm gonna hit my mana because there's a lot of cards that give you mana that can produce mana, and that's the problem with. It's not. It's a lot of problems with the set that led up to this, but it's so easy to do things that like it's so easy to do things to set you up in a place where like if you make one mistake, one little mistake, like let's just say you tap wrong so you can play your second card, you pretty much lost the game from there. And
Yeah,
you can't make mistakes in this format. I've played a lot of games. You guys have seen the videos where I make one mistake and that's it. I just can't come back from. And
game's over. I tapped my mana wrong. Bye.
yeah, yeah, like
Well,
just concede, go to the next game.
I mean, I think that is kind of more of like an issue with a lot of the decks. It feels like are not really built to actually interact in a game of Magic. Like you're not actually answering stuff that your opponent plays. You're almost playing solitaire with almost every single style of deck. Like you're not trying to, press an advantage while dealing with your opponent's stuff. You're pretty much just like, hey, I'm doing what I'm doing, and hopefully I hit that before you're hitting yours in a way. I know
Yeah,
it's a very vague statement, but it's just like if someone hits the curve of turn 2 Omen, turn 3 Teferi, bounce my Omen, you can't do anything. Turn 4, it's like here's a fires, double spell into like a guard mage or whatever they're gonna do on turn 4. Then like turn 5, they're just like Elspeth. He's like Yorion, flicker the Elspeth, bounce my Teferi back, bounce the like fires or whatever they played previously. It's like I mean, there's really no coming back from that, or you know what I'm saying, or like even said, you have the Luca play, you have the into the agent. It's like mono red. It's pretty much just like if you stumble on lands against them, they're gonna kill you, and it's like they most of the time they're not even like worried about your creatures. They're hoping to get their the Amber Cleave off as fast as possible,
yeah,
and so it's just like yeah, go ahead.
and like mono deck. Well, I mean, Boros is one of the I wouldn't say contenders, but he is a fighting chance. But with Abash, like it just feels so linear to like I'm not gonna worry about what you do. If you play Teferi, I don't have instants or sorceries to just cast with a Bosch deck, so he doesn't bother me. I'm just swinging at you for face, and that's not the magic I want. That's not the one where like, hey, I'm gonna go fires or Teferi turn 3 fires, and then just Luca take your lands, or just a Bosch just hey, I'm gonna play my guys and they're just gonna swing. Like that isn't why I got into this game.
Yeah, there's
Right.
there's a reason there's formats out there, right? You want to play modern, go play modern. It's a 4 to 5 turn format for the most part. Most of those decks are going to determine how it's going to go, but realistically, standards hit that level. Yeah, Teferi was supposed to slow it down, but all it did was really speed it up.
And
Anytime you do something like that where you stop interaction, that's where Magic speeds up more. That's really what it boils down to. If in modern I can go first turn or second turn sometimes, get off a good engine that my opponent's going to have a hard time dealing with, I'm going to win this game by turn 3, 4. That's what this is right now. If on turn 3 I play Teferi, it goes unanswered, I'm going to play my fires. And if I have a Luca on turn 5 to get my Agent of Treachery, I've won. That's all there is to it. Play the Luca, get the agent, take something from my opponent, play the Yorin, flash everything. Agent comes back in, takes something else. Luca's going to go off again next turn. The
yeah,
game is over,
and
and that's
Yeah,
that's
what the issue is.
I just think it also is kind of just bad designing because it makes like rogue decks very like non-viable, right? So I mean, you still had like in formats like back when we had like Sultan mid range a long time ago. I mean, it almost kind of feels like back when Oko was still here and like Simic ran rampant, like when everywhere's before the what was the 2 mana card that was free if you cast it for
Once
free.
upon a time,
Yeah, yeah. Once upon a time, Oko, like Nissa, Krasis, like mass manipulations, and like Agent of Treacheries in that format. It's almost kind of like if you're not playing this or a variant of this, similar. It's like if you're not playing Yorion, you're not playing Luris or you're not playing Obosh, it's like you're like not in contention for actually winning unless like they stumble or something. I mean, Garuda's pretty like nice. Is like good, but I think like everyone's kind of figured out what they have to do against Garuda, and that's why it hasn't really seen as much play.
No, and that's
Um,
unfortunate because like that deck is so easy to beat. Like literally one mana artifact card can
yep,
just stop the whole deck. If
yep.
you try to one mana the Jeskai deck, well guess what? I can still produce tokens with Omen of the Sun. I can still produce a greater creature with Shark. Not to mention I can go my turn to Fairy, bounce it. I can still go Luca. And seeing as how Shark Typhoon is an ability, you can still cast it even though you have played your 2 cards with fires. You can still cast it, get the token because you're activating an ability of it, get the token, and still do the Luca effect. So that's what's so broken about that deck. Like in the main deck, it already has so many answers and ways out against other decks. That's why Garuda fell out of the format. Luris fell out of the format, and that's why Abash and Cycle decks, because Cycles you can go turn 1 Fox, turn 2 make the Fox go bigger, turn 3 make the Fox go bigger. By that time, you're still trying to cast your Teferi, and by that time it won't matter because turn 4, if which you're gonna draw a lot with the Cycle decks, you're gonna go Zenith Flare. You can't counter because you want Teferi. It should be game. That's the ideal hand they want, the ideal play they can get. But it's not always like that. That's why you don't see them in the contending spots.
I mean, I think that Zenith Flare deck. I mean, just the cycle deck. I mean, it's spicy. I just feel like it can be kind of clunky, like, in a sense. So
And
it's like if you really don't see the Zenith, which I mean, the whole entire deck, the only thing it does is draw. But if you miraculously don't have like two two Zeniths over the course of the game, and someone's put up a board state or has done the Teferi nonsense where they're bouncing your dudes back, I mean, you kind of don't have enough damage to actually like get in there.
no, and that's the
You
thing.
know,
The deck runs 16 lands because once again, you want to cycle a lot for the Zenith Flares to do as much damage as you can, which can be like I drew 2 lands, which is perfect. I cycled a lot. I got all my lands, but now I'm not seeing any Zenith Flare or the other way around. I got 2 Zenith Flares. I had only 3 lands. I'm kind of stuck in this position of I have the mana to cast it, but I don't have it because it's random what you're gonna draw, or I have the card to do it. I just don't have the mana to cast it.
Exactly. And I think that it would be nice if some of these other deck strategies were viable in this format. Like, ultimately, cycling with Zenith Flare is viable if you don't have to deal with the extreme value of the Yorn Fires. Mono Red, they can kind of deal with. They've got some dudes they can play on the board. For
I mean,
example, the
just they're
Teardrop
fast
2.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah, make a 1/1. If I make 1/1s all day, I'll eventually deal with it. Or I play my 2-drop 2/2 that gives me life every single time I cycle. Zenith Flare gives me life, so if I have to burn it early to deal 5 damage and maybe get 5 life, that's okay. I feel fine with that. I take a dude off the board, I get my life, and I continue to play. But when you have decks that just go way beyond that with Yorn Fires, you don't have the capability of playing a deck like that. You can't play Flash, which they really tried to push hard in this format, but you can't do it because Teferi is a thing. And once you put Teferi on the board, that shuts down Flash. You're done. Mid range can't go the distance with fires, so it's kind of out. So you're stuck with. And the interesting thing, and I didn't think I'd see this anytime soon, but Luris and Cat aren't seeing as much play, not nearly as much play now because of decks like Yorn. I mean, that's a problem when Cat has been this engine that's disgusting. And I argued so many times for ban Cat. Cat's an engine by itself. Yeah, you need the oven, but the point is that Cat can do everything without paying mana. It literally does it all by itself. And it's not even seeing as much play because it can't go the distance against the mono red or against the Yorn Fires. It's a huge issue. So
Yeah,
we've basically shut down everything that we, or should I say, Wizards of the Coast printed to give us variety because of a card that's been in the format since Fires was in. Um,
a drain.
Yeah, Eldraine.
Eldraine.
So since Eldraine, we've had this problem. And I would even argue it goes back to War of the Spark. We had some variety prior to War of the Spark. You release War of the Spark, you print God knows how many Planeswalkers. You don't put a limit on a card like Teferi, and then you print Eldraine, give us Oko, give us Fires, and this is a problem. And I think Field of the Dead came from
M20.
it was in 20.
Yeah, M20.
So
And
which
I never had a problem with Field of the Dead. It to me was a reasonable card. Yes, it should have been. You can only use this effect once per turn. So even if you had four, you can get four. But once again, it didn't. It wasn't a problem. A good board wipe, mind you. Teferi was the issue because you can cast your Escape Shift during your opponent's turn. So Teferi was a problem in that deck. The Field of the Dead wasn't an issue. You can go spam your tokens. All right, I have a board wipe, or I have some like blockers. We're gonna keep trading here. But Teferi is what made that deck broken. You can't interact with my lands, my ramps. Once Teferi pluses one, it doesn't even have to resolve. It doesn't have to stay on the board. Just plus one. I can sack my Teferi, or you can kill it, whatever. I can then go Escape Shift on your turn, get all these 2/2 tokens, and then just kill you for game.
I mean, in a sense, like Field of the Dead was kind of just broken in of itself. Like, let's say if you were to board wipe when they get 5 or 6 tokens, because that's when you would optimally want to board wipe.
Yeah.
So you're board wiping most likely on your turn, right? And they're probably ahead on the land count on you and stuff, and it's just like they're just gonna reestablish. It's like they get 2 or 3 of the Field of the Deads out, which you could tutor with the Golos guy, right? So you could completely just tutor it out whenever you wanted to. You ran max copies of Golos in those decks, and so you're gonna see consistently like two of them, right? You just play another land. It's like boom, here you go. Here's another board state for you. It's just a continual board state with no actual like using of your resources to actually get right, because you're still like like you just play a land drop. Here you go. It's like if you have a spell that lets you tutor for 2 lands, not only are you getting 2 lands, but you're getting 4 dudes.
Yeah.
Out of it, So it's just like that's what made it broken, is because like even after you've done it once, it's like they're just gonna reestablish board state within a turn or two.
Yeah, and it was the
you're
land that
right back to square one.
Yeah, and it was the land, so it's not like I can just Casualties of War, get rid of your enchantment. Lands are harder to hit to get rid of. I mean, Casualties of War does hit lands, so that was a bad example. But
like Unmoored Ego, or like
yeah.
Thought Eraser, or like Agonizing. You didn't have like a duress type effect to answer it, so it's like it's gonna happen. Like in a sense, like it's inevitable. If this game carries on long enough, so you're kind of just forced to like race them. But of course, they have all the wipes of their own.
Board wipes, Hydroid Crisis, things like that, just to keep them in the game. And I think that we touched on something there that's extremely important in the discussion. What it really boils down to is if you're going to print cards like this, you print the balancing end of that, and they haven't done that. Again, we'll go back to Cat. Cat's really frustrating to play against in every way because it's just its engine of its own. But realistically, in the game too, if you put Leyline of the Void in your deck, you open up and you put that on the board at the start of the game, your opponent now has to take a very slow progression into getting their game going because they can't just cat oven. That's not an option anymore. And if they're playing mono black, they don't have an answer for Leyline of the Void. Best case scenario, they're playing black white and just happen to decide they're going to sideboard in D-Spark and answer it. And that's really way Magic should be played is, hey, we're going to print this good card, and when we do this, we're already taking that in consideration. Here's you 3 answers that you put all the different colors to answer this card. Field of the Dead comes into the format. If we had the Field of Ruin that we had previously, Field of the Dead's not as big of an issue. But they didn't give us Field of the Ruin. They didn't give us any of the cards they have in Modern, the 4-drop red spells that exile lands out of your deck and everything else. The best option you had was Unmoored Ego, and you better pray that you see it before they play a Field of the Dead.
I mean, Unmoored Ego couldn't touch it because it had to be a non-land card.
Unmoored Ego is any card.
Yeah,
and I did that against it. So Unmoored Ego is a good answer. But
is
again,
it? No.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but again, you have to do it before they play the Field of the Dead.
yeah.
That's not necessarily a great option because if they turn one go, I don't have a turn one play. Here's the Field of the Dead. Well, I can get 3 of the Field of the Dead, but I can't hit the fourth one. It's still a problem on board, and I don't have an answer. We did have it was a really good answer to it in red, uh, Alpine Moon,
Oh yeah,
but it immediately rotated. We had it
yes.
for all of a month, and then it rotated.
Yeah, yeah. When it first came out, it was like, oh, Alpine Moon. The prices went up, and then like it just rotated out. And fielded that is too slow in the format for other formats. So in standard, it was just running rampant. And um, I mean, you like they did print Casualties of War, but it was too slow for that. Um, even if you did go Casualties of War, well, guess what? I just wasted my 6 turn play to hit one of your 4 Field of the Dead. So you're still making a bunch of 2/2 tokens.
Yeah, yeah. If you had another stun effect, like on a, what we did have, and I don't know if it hits it. What's the 2-drop 1/1 white flyer that stops ETB effects? I think it only does it for
Hushbringer.
creature.
It's only for
Hush-
creatures. Hushbringer, yeah.
Yeah. So if a creature would do something, right? Well,
Yeah.
what if we had a 2-drop and it's not specified to just creatures? Just stop ETB effects. That
And
would have been a great answer for something like that, to stop lands. And that's the issue, right?
and that's the point though. Hushbringer is such a balanced card. It's a 2-drop 1/2 that stops both players from entering the battle effect. So I
Yeah.
can't abuse it and start, playing my blink cards. I literally stop myself. So I'm stopping myself to stop you. And that is a perfectly balanced card. It's a 2-drop, that's a 1/2 with lifelink flying. So you can't easily just run it over. It has flying. It has a good body of 2. That stops both players. Unlike Teferi, that says your opponent can only cast, mind you, it says spells, not sorceries, so I can't go flash decks. It stops my opponent from playing their cards. And that's why I don't like Teferi. Even though right now he's kind of saving the format, because they put themselves in this weird position where if you ban Teferi, Temur Reclamation, Demir Flash, they're just going to go rampant. And maybe Azorius Control for like the third deck. But they're just going to go rampant with all the flash decks. Slitherwisp, not that he's a problem right now, and I don't think he is that big of a problem, but I think he's a little bit too overpowered for whenever you cast a flash spell, you draw a card and you deal 1 damage.
Well, Flash has some obvious drawbacks. If you play the deck, realistically, any deck that establishes a creature and forces you to do stuff on their turn, and and then they play on your turn, that's where Flash kind of falters. So if on their turn when they play a land tapped, and then on my turn 2 I put a decent creature on the board, like um, a druid, for example. Put a druid on the board. It's a 2/1 with hexproof. This is a good tempo creature. Just swing 2 every turn. And then I hold up a kill spell like uh, Heartless Act or Murderous Rider, and I just swing 2 and I pass. That's all I do. Just swing 2 and pass. And my opponent tries to play his Slitherwisp. Okay, cool. You dropped it. Still into your turn or my turn. I'm going to kill it, and it goes back to your turn. They then have to make the decision: do I play on my turn, allowing my opponent to play on their turn, or do I continue to try to play Flash? It comes into that, and then they're in a bad way. They also gave us really good cards to deal with Flash. They gave us Shifting Ceratops. They gave
Yeah,
us
that is true.
I mean, Mystical Dispute answers
Mystical
every single
Dispute.
one. Yeah,
Yeah,
every single one of their cards. Like where that deck just suffers is just anytime someone can establish something that's already there and they don't have like the Brazen Bar and like to efficiently establish a guy and then also like take away one of your dudes. Like they have to do that around turn 4, and they're already wanting to be ahead of you by like turn 2. So like they're wanting to flash their guy in at the end of your turn 2 after you've casted your guy. So they're gonna flash their cutthroat, or maybe they have like a Spectre Sailor or something like that,
right.
and they're trying to get like their octopus strat going because they're
Yeah.
wanting to do like old
But see,
mono blue the
but see,
type of thing and then counter.
here's the thing. You talked about going. I go turn 1 island. You go turn 1 forest, right? I go turn 2. What do you call it? A land, and then you go turn 2. Brazen, not brazen. Druid, Paradise Druid, right? They have a 2 drop. I think she has flash, where all my flash creatures can't get countered. So your mystical disputes are pointless. I can still go quench. I can still mystical disputes. I mean, that's one of the 4 cards in your 60 card deck, but they do have a somewhat response to that, where
Yeah.
they can't get countered.
Well, you play it differently depending on the situation. I don't want to get too far off topic, but
No, yeah,
realistically,
yeah, yeah.
on the draw rather than on the play, you assume they have a 2 drop. You hold up the kill spell. You deal with their creature. You force them to go turn 3. They don't have a creature they can flash in a counter. So on your turn 3, that's when you try to establish something bigger. You go for more. You force them to play the counter spell. Then when they get to 4, if they're playing the blue green version of it, then you have to consider that there's a Frilled Mystic there. If they're not, turn 4 is another turn to just shove something down and see if they have the counter spell. Once you establish something, it makes it really difficult for that deck. So it just depends on how you play it. But going back, it's just the idea that if I'm playing Flash, there's good answers. There's Fry, can't be countered, deals 5 damage to target blue or white creature or planeswalker. You've got the mystical disputes. You've got just simple kill spells, which pretty much shut down Flash. If they can't establish a creature and do what they want to do, they're just sitting there waiting for you, just trying to respond to you. And eventually you play something like a Shifting Ceratops or whatever the case may be that they can't deal with. It's done at that point. I can't do anything with blue. That Shifting Ceratops is going to sit there and stare at me, and I have to find a black spell that can answer it, which they don't run too many of those either.
No, no.
So it just becomes that problem for them. Whereas Teferi, your only realistic answer is to kill it on your turn, counter it on their turn. And the only good counter spell right now for dealing with that's Mystical Dispute. But then again, if they play it on turn 4 and you're on the draw and you Mystical Dispute it and they Mystical Dispute your Mystical Dispute, you better have a second one in hand or this,
Yeah.
they've established it. Now they have Teferi, you lose.
Well, it's like also there's an argument. It's like you're running Mystical Disputes main board to answer that type of style, and you go against the Obosh deck, and
Yep.
then that deck's just sitting there. You're just like, well, this kind of sucks.
Exactly. And the whole cycle variant that they put into this was really nice, but you really can't use a lot of the cards that they gave us for cycle just because they don't really interact with what the current format is. But my argument would be, like you mentioned, Doug, the thing that needs to be done is we get rid of Teferi, which of course that's rotating here soon, so that may not be a card they'll touch, and I don't think they will. Obviously, it's not a card that they're losing money on or making money on. It kind of they're just doing their own thing.
Yeah.
So if we could though, if we could get rid of Teferi, if we could get rid of Fires, and we could get rid of Reclamation.
Reclamation is a big issue.
Yeah,
Fires lets you, even if I have 4 fires, I can only cast 2 cards. Reclamation, on the other hand, if I have 4, it essentially quadruples my mana, which in a Temerec deck, that's insane.
yeah. You take away Reclamation though, those decks kind of slow down. They're still viable. They're just not the same overwhelming power that they are currently with the red board wipes that they have, which make them extremely strong. And I think they even play Frilled Mystic. They play the Shark Typhoon along with their expansion Explosion to finish the game off.
Yeah.
Decks like that have a lot that are going for them. But if you take away the engines that let them abuse the cards they're playing, they become viable without being overpowered. So if we take away those 3 cards, I think you realistically see the format kind of settle in. I don't even think Luris myself is that bad because, like we've mentioned, you can answer Luris
And see,
and you've done your job. It's hard for a black deck to do anything at that point because they use them as a companion, so they can't play them in the main board. So they play their one Luris, you answer it, they got their value out of that one card. They better be on top of that game, or you come back and you take over.
and that's the issue. Like, not an issue. That's the point. Let's just say you do ban, well, just Reclamation, Fires of Invention, and Teferi, right? Well, you're probably thinking, oh, Mono Red is just gonna run rampant. No, because Luris decks are good against those decks.
Mm-hmm.
Abosh decks can actually go toe to toe with them because, well, yeah, you're waiting for your turn 4 Torbrand. I got my turn 4 Abosh, and whatever I deal with my first strike is gonna deal double that damage. Which, once again, your 2-2 your 2-1 because of Heraldic Banner can easily get rid of their Torbrand. You got shocks, which once again doubles the damage. Get rid of your Torbrand. Like those decks aren't going to be overpowered. They're going to be strong, yes, but just like everything else in the meta, it'll be strong, just not overpowered like how we're seeing now.
Exactly, and we still have cards like Euro that give mid range a chance at playing. Um, you have with the release of Shovel and a lot of these creatures that mutate, an option for diverting into some different strategies that would really work well. I think that there's plenty of room for expansion inside of that, but realistically, keeping the meta from opening up is these cards that are basically engines that just allow a deck to do what it wants to do, uncontested. Mono Black, even to some degree, comes back with the removal of Fires, Reclamation, and Teferi, and it comes back in a strong way. If we just got rid of Fires and Reclamation too, and we just left Teferi in the format, I think that when we first started in Throne of Theros Beyond Death, we had blue white being played, and it was this really strong mid range deck with Dream Trawler, and it wasn't the only deck. It was actually, in my opinion, a decently opened up format, but of course with Fires, it came back around to this let's abuse cards instead of let's play some innovative magic gameplay. So you take away the fires, you take away the reclamation. You even open up for blue white to come back. You open up for control to be somewhat viable as long as they can figure out how to deal with Teferi. There's a lot of things you can do. Flash even can see some play because then they can play the mystical disputes. There isn't this overwhelming advantage for Teferi to be the which is game ending card because they don't have fires to turn around and give them so much advantage in the uh, preceding turns to finish you off.
And
So
and that's the thing. The great counter to Azorius control in Theros Beyond Death was mono red. So it's
mm,
like I'm gonna play the slow game. If my opponent is trying to end me by turn 3, which they obviously could, I'm gonna have trouble. Yes, I can sideboard. I can find a way out. But with a deck with format that's opened up, so instead of banning Teferi, I would say we banned Agent of Treachery because he is just overpowered. Not because of you can bring him out with Luca. That's fine if you bring out Big Beat Stick. If it doesn't have counters, it's gonna fall prey to my what do you call it, Heartless Act. But as opposed to Agent, when it enters the battlefield, I take your land. So not only am I setting you back, I'm like in a way ramping myself up. And I got a 2/3 blocker on let's just say turn 5, where if you're going against let's say mono red, you have a lot of life gain in that deck. You have a blocker now, and you're taking their lands, their heraldic banners. So in a way, you're de-ramping them. You're putting them further behind while you're increasing yourself. So that's why I would like Agent, because one, it's not tied to anything. Like if he leaves the field, you get your stuff back. No, he just takes everything. Which, mind you, lands is once again the hardest things to ever get back and destroy. So it's just like it's a card that is ruining mana decks. Like if your opponent is on turn 4, you can go turn 5 with fires already on the board, take their land. Now they have to play a land to get to turn 4. Um, I mean to their turn 4 back, and not to mention like deal with your board state.
yeah, I mean, I can see where you're coming from. I think ultimately they don't touch Teferi or Agent of Treachery just because they're leaving the format soon.
Yeah,
But I think even that being said, if Fires and Reclamation went, Gyruda would even see play again. Some of those decks are just too fast for you to play an Agent of Treachery and win the game. If you're playing Agent of Treachery and your opponent plays a Gyruda and they get all this board state advantage on you, taking one or two cards from them isn't going to change much. They're just going to go off the next turn and do it again, Mythasa or whatever the case may be, and just have insane value on that end. But the biggest issue right now with Agent of Treachery is the capability of doing it and abusing it multiple times in the same turn without any setup. Fires, you could argue, is setup, but it's really not that much of a setup. It's play Teferi, play Fires uncontested, and then play either Luca or get to the Agent of Treachery as quickly as possible. And all of those things are very doable with as much scrying, draw power, and everything else that those decks have. So, whereas Gyruda was like, what, turn 6? I have a companion, but you know it's coming. you kind of can set up for it, play around it.
And that's the thing. Like, you're not gonna go turn 6, wait for Garuda to come in. You're gonna play cards like Druids, that new 2-drop 1/3 that ramps for mutate creatures. Um, I forgot something naturalist. You have ramp cards, so there is a chance of whiffing. Like, hey, the deck was shuffled, in a bad way to where I milled lands and my ramps, so my Garuda isn't going to do anything when I milled. There is that chance of happening. Not to
Yeah.
mention, I drew a bunch of my, rampers and lands, and all I have is this one Garuda to play. One literal mystical dispute is just going to ruin my whole plan. Which that's why
Yeah,
like the deck was so easy to beat. Like it was
but
not inconsistent, but there was those chances of I could only play my companion. You killed it. I'm done for that. Like next 2 turns until I draw something else.
well, like also with Garuda decks, it seemed like when like you said, I mean, you get like a 5 mana advantage from mystical disputing. There's 6 mana Garuda, right? Well, on top of that, you had they started building them more greedy. Like they started having like the Thasas, the flickers. Like so they would get a Thassa, or they would get the what was the copy?
Spark double.
Spark
Yeah, it
double.
would come in with Spark Double. And so half the time, the only thing you really had to do is just kill the Garuda on the stack before it starts milling. Because half the time they would just get like a clone effect, and then they're having to clone like their Paradise Druid, or it's just the Spark Double hits the board, or it's like there's a Thassa with nothing, and you just have to like hope and pray they don't have a another Garuda in hand or anything like that, right? So
Yeah.
I feel that was ultimately the downfall with Garuda is that they just started. I feel like honestly, Garuda still could be a good support piece. Like I honestly, in my opinion, don't really care about bannings. Like it's like I feel like in certain there's some sideboard that can be utilized against every single deck, and like you can set up your deck against if you want to beat fires, you kind of have to play a certain sequence of cards to outvalue them in every single way in different colors, or you just play fires and you just have a better hand than them basically. But for me, it's like I really want what I would like out of the new set that's coming up is I'm more of a graveyard reanimator type of dude, and so like I would really just like a mulch effect or a grizzly salvage effect. I think that would really open up ways because I mean, Cat can get support from it. Luris would love it, like something like that, like a mulch effect, and just being able to like because there's not really any good mill cards in standard right now. Like back in was it
Eldritch
Eldritch Moon? Yeah, Eldritch Moon and Shadows. You had Grapple with the Past. I mean, back in what the previous Shadows, you still had like Grizzly Salvage and all that stuff back in that meta. And I mean, that's what really set up those graveyard strategies. And we haven't had really like a good solid graveyard strategy since the War of the Spark, Sultai mid range with uh the Dreadhorde deck.
And that's
And
the
that
thing. Sorry, that's a good
no,
point
you're
on
good.
there. There was a what was it? A Grixis mill deck, and also a Demir mill deck where they ran Agent of Treacheries, Blood for Bones, Bond of Revival, where they cheesed Agent out. But the big thing about that was there was never guaranteed that I would mill it, and even if I did, there was never guarantee that like my opponent would let it resolve. So there was a chance of counterplay. Like, hey, I milled big beat sticks. My opponent can deal with that. Hey, I milled Agent, but I casted my Bond of Revival and he just countered it. So there goes my play, my turn 5 play. It's not like how it is now where you can literally Agent 3 times in one turn.
Right,
Yeah,
and you're just not
uncontested
like
instant fairies on the board. That's
just
it. Yeah.
comboing off. Yeah, like I don't know. It's just kind of like disappointing for me because I was really like the biggest thing. I mean, we have like corpse churn like in this format, which is a mulch like effect, like I'm saying, but it's like the importance of being able to add a land back to your hand in a lot of these graveyard strategies because like typically you're wanting to guarantee a turn 5 like I have to guarantee a turn 5 land drop, or in Blood for Bones case, a turn 4 land drop. And if I can't guarantee that, it's very difficult for these strategies. And so, what I'm trying to lead back to is with Garuda. I feel like Garuda, like as a companion and building a deck around him, I don't think he's that strong, but I feel like he would be a nice support piece for a reanimator style deck, and just having like one or two of like some of the top end big boss monsters you can bring in. You're just like, boom, here you go. Like I just create. It's like you bring him and a Kogla in, answer the board state of somebody
Yeah.
else. Maybe even like stick a Kogla against a fires deck, and they don't really have an answer for it. You can pop their fires when he gets to swing the next turn. That's honestly one of the best cards for me when I've been actually toolboxing in my decks, because I've been playing a lot of Sultan mid range, is Kogla, because Kogla has pretty much everything you want in this format. You want to be able to answer dudes because he fights on ETB.
Yeah.
You want to be able to pop artifacts and enchantments when he swings. Also, if you run humans, you can give him indestructible. So, I mean, besides having get Teferi bounce back to your hand, you're completely fine with it. The one thing that you're scared of is Elspeth Conquers Death, obviously,
Yeah, because
because that card is just bonkers in
it's an
every single
instant
way.
removal. Yeah, I feel like they looked at Eldest Reborn and they're like, how can we make this more broken? Because Eldest
Yeah,
Reborn was you sack a creature. For your first counter, your opponent sacks a creature, any creature or planeswalker, so you can choose. The second one was they discard a card they're choosing, and then the third one they bring back a planeswalker creature, no counters. And then Elspeth Conquers Death just if you ever heard of the definition of power creep, that's a perfect example for it. Like, it is just so insanely broken, especially for what an extra mana cost of white. They're both 5 drops with the same effects, except for the second one, it's different. But the first one, you choose what is exiled, and then the third one they come back with a +1 loyalty counter or a +1/+1 counter.
yeah. And the thing is about Elspeth Conquers Death is the best answer to an Elspeth Conquers Death that your opponent plays is your own Elspeth Conquer Death. Like that's pretty much the best play you have into it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and I think realistically, what I'd like to see from this next set is um, just more thought into the balancing aspect of things. You mentioned Reanimator. They gave us Kunaros. They gave us Grafdigger's Cage. They gave us Leyline of the Void. There's balancing effects that they throw into these games to say, hey, if your opponent's going for a strategy, you can always throw this in there and you can kind of stop it. They didn't do that against Fairy. They didn't do that against Fires. There's no, oh, if you're trying to, I take it back. There's one option against Fires, and it's not that great of an option. I think it was printed back in.
I mean, you have like cards like Knight of Autumn, but I mean, just Absent is not a good color right now.
Oh no
Yeah,
no
But
Lavinia.
upon
She's a two
Lavinia,
drop.
yeah,
She's the perfect
oh
counter to that
yeah,
deck, but it's so easy to like. I go Lavinia, you can go to Fairy Bouncer. Well, I'm gonna waste my turn again to just play her. Like it's
and
so
they're
easy
just
to
gonna
get rid
kill
of
it.
her. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's the thing is like if it's more of a Grafdigger's Cage, that's an artifact. That's very specific. You don't run cards in the main board to deal with artifacts, and that's where I think it boils down to. Like they gave us Sorcerer's Spyglass, which was really good a couple formats back. It was just one of those cards that's like, okay, my opponent's banking on this card really giving them the advantage. I play Sorcerer's Spyglass, look at their hand, I get information, I shut down a card, so they can't play this Planeswalker and just get a bunch of bonus stuff. Like for example, against the Teferi of Dominaria. Sorcerer's Spyglass was gorgeous. Play it. Okay, get to see your hand. I kind of know your tempo. And then, regardless of what you have, I'm going to call Teferi Hero Dominaria. And I've stopped that deck from being able to do what it wants to do. Then they have to play something very specific to get rid of Sorcerer's Spyglass.
yeah,
And it takes that edge off those decks and makes them have to play more honest in the sideboard game.
and
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 you
that's the
don't
thing.
have to do that with Fires.
Sorry, you were saying something about
Go
fires.
ahead.
Okay, so I feel like they're giving Azorius kind of all the answers to everything because artifacts and enchantments. You have Heliod's intervention. Flash. You have Teferi. Big beat sticks. You got Elspeth Conquers Death. You got Sharknado, which is blue. Like I feel like Azorius is getting all the answers and all the like responses to beat themselves and beat other decks, as opposed to mono green. Yes, I can kill your creatures, I mean your artifacts and enchantments with Gem Razor, but if I'm not splashing blue and white for fairy, it's gonna get countered. And right now, I feel like, and out of all the sets that I've played in, I feel like Azorius is getting a lot of like the responses and cards to deal with those responses.
Let's not forget they're printing a new set for Teferi coming up here soon too.
Yeah, yeah. So what I'm hoping to see out of this new set is not higher converted mana cost, but higher restricted costed like cards. For example, if Fires of Invention was, let's just say, 3 red, one colorless, 3 red and another color, or 2 red and two other colors, like 2 red and, like, let's just say 2 white or something, it'll be a lot harder for them to play it. Yes, they will still run 4 of it, but it's not like every turn 4 is going to be guaranteed for them, and that's what
Yeah.
I want to see.
Yeah, and
Honestly,
again, it
just
keeps
like
the
with
deck more honest.
the theme of what the deck does, I feel like it should have been a 4 color card,
Yeah,
in my opinion. Just because just the theme of what it's going for. It's like it's like a, what is it? It's like a guy knocking on like a anvil, right?
yeah,
Like
Yeah,
in the picture, right? So it's just like you're inventing something. It's like until Fires came out, there was no 4 color decks viable in the format, right?
no.
And so it's like
Well,
I feel like,
I mean,
honestly,
they're
say Fires of Invention should have been maybe a 4 color card because that's what you're kind of wanting to do with it, So you're wanting to stretch the boundaries of what the constraints of what mana, you know.
and that's the thing. There was one 5 color deck, and that was the it was technically 2 colors, but it was the Field of the Dead. You can still play Gates, but look at what happened to Gates once they banned Field of the Dead. It's useless. Like, nobody touches those cards. And if they made, Field of the what do you call it? Fires of Invention, one of each color except for, let's just say, I don't know, like Swamp or something. You know, like if it was like green, red, white, and blue, they still wouldn't touch it because it is so inconsistent to play Gates. Not to mention that on your turn 4, if you don't have a land aside from a gate to play, if you play the gate, it's coming in tapped, so you still can't play that card.
yeah, and if they go with shocks, there's always the issue of I'm playing shock lands, which ticks my life down really fast, and then my opponent coming in with mono red or something is just going to blow me out. And either way, they're on the back foot because you play gates to keep from shocking yourself. You're not playing cards on the turns when the gates are coming in tapped, like you mentioned.
Yeah,
But with the way it is, it's, oh, I just need 1 red.
yeah.
We're good.
At best, all I need is 1 red.
We're good. Yeah. So yes, restrictions I think are super important. Which played Yu-Gi-Oh back in the day, we all did, um, and
Yes.
restrictions were huge. And then as power creep comes along, they start printing more cards, making them better, and removing restrictions so that they'll see more play. And I get it. Yeah, if you're talking about marketing, if you're talking about making money as a entity that prints cards and is out for profit, that's the quickest way to get people to purchase a set. Oh, look, these new cards better than the old. You have to buy the set in order to get them. You're going to sell more. But the downside to that is you also upset your player base. You push them away. Who plays Yu-Gi-Oh anymore? It's a dead card game. It's
Yeah,
gone. If you
yeah.
continue down this path, if you don't put good restrictions on cards, then you're going to have this problem. And the beauty of standard is it rotates. You produce a set, and you do a good job of getting some balancing effects in there. It will sell. Those cards will rotate. New set will come in, and people will have to buy new cards. That's not going to be an issue. So ultimately, they do have a better setup to keep the longevity of the game going. They just have to do it without pissing off the player base and making everybody just move away. They don't want people going to a secondary market like they have in Pioneer and Modern, where people have cards that they're buying through a store that's already been purchased and they're not actually making money off of it.
In
So,
which, actually, they have actually started printing some. There, I've seen a lot of YouTube videos with what do you call it? The Tolarian Community College, where they're looking at that secondary market and they're making sets for that purpose, like the secret layers for the fetch lands. That's how
yeah.
they're reaching into that. Yes, it is expensive. That's who they're targeting it for. I'm not gonna buy it. If I wanted to get into it and it was like $30, yeah, of course I'll get into it by buying that. But now it's $400. I'm not going to buy the old ones. I'm not going to buy the new ones. So I kind of don't want to go into that market until there's an affordable way for me to do it.
Yeah, and that's not likely to happen anytime soon. Let's be
Yeah.
real. Cards like that are always going to draw in, and if that's who they want to sell to, it's fine. But realistically, Magic has always been constructed around you're restricted in what you can do based on the colors that you play, and they've gone away from that. They basically said, now we're going to give you this engine that just lets you do what you want to do and forget about the colors you're playing. Don't worry about it. Companions are two colored. You're not getting more specific with them.
No,
And
they should have been specific. I feel
very
like
much so.
because that's what makes Yorion. And I even said this when we were talking about ten best cards to like look out for standard. Yorion was one of those like top five because he was white blue split, and three colorless. You can literally go mono white and still play Yorion, mono blue still play Yorion, and he will still reach the maximum amount of effect. Like yes, there are other like enchantments that other colors have, but like I said, you don't even have to run white and still go Yorion. Like Temur, Timber enchantment control kind of thing. Let's just say you can go Yurion, and you're still not gonna like be restricted to like play him. You know?
Absolutely. And that's it. I think that when you do companions, you got to be a little bit smarter about it. Let's just make them what they are. You've got Luris. He's supposed to be black white. You've got Yamori. He's supposed to be green black. I mean, let's do what they're supposed to do. Put them in that segment and make your players play those colors. If you're not doing that, then you're really opening it up to exactly what I was talking about, where there's not enough color restriction, there's not enough casting restriction, and it makes the formats very just not fun for the player base. And realistically, looking down the road, when you print cards like this that aren't restricted, or at least if they're unrestricted like these cards are, they have weaker effects than what we've been given. You're going to run into new sets are printed, and these cards become that next engine that's just frustrating for players to play against. Luris comes back in a big way. Yorin comes back in a big way. Garuda comes back in a big way just because you didn't put the restrictions on them to begin with, and now you've got that mess on your hands. I mean, when cards like Narset, the Ancient Way, aren't seeing play, that's a problem. That's a good card. It
Yeah,
is a really good card, and it sees no play. There's something wrong with
yeah.
the way that you're setting up your sets, and it's only going to make things worse. And when Narset does see play, by the way, it's in a Fires deck, so
And that's the thing. Like, there's so many new enchantments that you want to play with that like desperately could build decks around that came out in Ikoria that you literally can't because let's just say I go fire. Let's just say for some reason I go fires. I play two enchantments, right? Like the survivors, the Sultai Nest and the Temur enchantment, the Song of Creation. Well, guess what? You're just gonna go Elspeth Conquers Death, and then you're gonna go Yurion, Elspeth Conquers Death, and you're gonna hit my two cards. And now I'm like, well, my deck that I wanted to play, I literally can't because you just took out two enchantments, you know? And like, I feel like there needs to be like back to you saying like more restriction to that because um, Elspeth Conquers Death for literally being two planes, three colorless. It's just too easy to bring out. Yorion is too easy to bring out. Fires of Invention is the most broken card to bring out for one red, three colorless. And at that point, once you play Fires, the rest of your deck is just colorless. Like you don't have to worry about like mana restrictions except for your lands, which obviously for the castle, Ventress and Sharknado, because you have to pay the blue for his ability effect.
yeah, absolutely. And that's the majority of the deck anyway, so they're not really too worried about that.
Yeah.
Uh, it realistically just boils down to I just want to see one red. As long as I see one red, and with the new mountains, I mean, you should see one red.
Yeah. And like you said, if he was one of each color, that would make sense because once you cast it, then you're free to open whatever you want to do. But like a good example is Slitherwisp. He is two islands and a black. So the only deck you're gonna play him in is Demir Flash or Soul type Flash. Maybe you can go Esper, but Esper doesn't have that many good flash cards, so you're gonna more than likely go Sultai because of Frilled Mystic, Brazen Borrower, Night Pack Ambusher. But once again, he is limited. If the fairy was two white and a blue, yes, you're not gonna see him every turn three, but for a fact they're kind of sticking to that color pool. But once again, they went Jeskai, which fires. Once we already talked about that, but like Slither was to me was once again not too broken, an overpowered card for a two blue and a black, but he's not easily like you can spam him on turn three, unless if you're playing Demir.
Yeah, it's much harder to hit those mana restrictions, and that's why Kaya's Wrath, when it was printed, wasn't the end all of board wipes, because if you're playing Kaya's Wrath, you're probably playing Esper, and then you've got to hit double blue on turn 3 for counter spells. You got to hit double black, double white on turn 4 for Kaya's Wrath, and that, my friend, becomes very difficult in the color scheme, even for what you mentioned with Sultai Flash. By turn 3, you've got to hit double blue, double black, and then by turn 4, you've got to hit double green, double blue. Those are very, very hard colors to hit. You can do it consistently with what we have, but you can't do it to the degree that you can for fires, which is by turn 3, I get to hit one blue, one white, and by turn 4, one red, and I'm good to go. We really don't have much to do here.
No, and that's the thing. Like, you're probably thinking like, oh, well, I can just shock this land in, and I have all the colors I need. Well, you're killing yourself to shocking those lands in. And I get it, going down to like 14 with, shock lands, it's fine. But you also have to remember that there are aggro decks out there. And if you're shocking yourself, well, guess what? You just literally dealt 6 damage to yourself. That mono red is looking like, dude, this is the best thing I could have hoped for.
Yeah. They would love to see an extra 2 life come out. And I can't tell you how many games against mono red shocking a land ended up making me lose the game, but not shocking the land would have done the same thing. So yeah, if the opponent or the fires player has to have 4 colors to hit that fires, 3 colors to hit that Teferi, they are much more susceptible to that mono red matchup, and it makes it a more fair format all the way around for everyone. And even in the case of control, they viably see some play, just because now there's less of a chance that Teferi is going to solidly come down on turn 3 every single time, and that makes the game a lot easier for control.
Yeah. Do you guys want to say anything before we dip?
No, go ahead and end the video.
Right. Print Mulch 2020. Print Grapple with the Past 2020. That's all I want.
You guys heard it.
Wizards.
Print Mulch 2020 or 2021, so they can start doing it, like thinking about it now, so printing to the next year set. But no, that's everything we wanted to talk about the meta. Obviously we can't fix it now. It's not like Hearthstone where you can just go in game and change it. So we're stuck with what we got. Obviously, if you have invested into the cards, play the decks. If you didn't, Cycle was out there. Mono Red from last set, if you already have the cards, play it. There's still viable decks. It's just we're going to play with what we got. Literally, we're going to play the hand we're dealt. So, thank you for watching. If you enjoy the content, click the like button below. Don't forget to subscribe. And this is Team Out of the Tank bringing you the meta discussion.